Commander Elena Reyes excused herself from the banquet, the whispered warning about the Mrelf battle group still echoing in her mind. She made her way through the Intrepid's corridors, nodding to crew members who stood a little straighter as she passed. The ship felt different somehow, knowing they were now officially part of something much larger than humanity had ever imagined. In her private quarters, Elena accessed the secure terminal and requested a direct line to Admiral Kowalski back at Earth Command. The quantum communication system took nearly 3 minutes to establish the connection. Remarkable speed considering they were several light years from home. "Commander, I trust our new friends are playing nice." Kowalski's weathered face appeared on screen, the Sydney skyline visible through his office window. "Mostly, sir, but something interesting has come up." Elena forwarded the sensor logs showing the peculiar scanning patterns of the Shirelian vessels. "They're deliberately avoiding deep scans of our systems, particularly anything related to our computational architecture or encryption. When questioned, they become evasive." Kowalski frowned, leaning closer to his screen. Similar reports are coming in from the Jakarta and the Churchill. Captain Okonkwo mentioned a Vasarian diplomat who nearly fainted when accidentally exposed to our navigation encryption protocols during a tour. "Sir, I overheard something about a Mrelf battle group being quarantined after scanning human ships. Any intel on that?" The Admiral's expression darkened. "That's actually why I approved your transmission request. 12 hours ago, we received a data packet from the Concord archives as part of our membership orientation. It contained a heavily redacted incident report from 3 standard years ago, when a Mrelf patrol attempted to scan the UNS Dauntless during our first, undocumented contact with their species." Elena felt her pulse quicken. "What happened?" "The report is frustratingly vague, Commander. Terms like cognitive contamination and recursive perception failure. What we do know is that all 4 ships in their group were immediately withdrawn from service, and the crews are undergoing what translates roughly as conceptual decontamination." The implication sent a chill down Elena's spine. "They're afraid of something in our technology, sir. Or maybe in us. That's what Earth intelligence believes." Kowalski tapped his screen, sending the new file to her terminal. "Effective immediately, you're to initiate Protocol Labyrinth. All crew interactions with alien representatives will be monitored for information gathering. Find out what they know that we don't. About ourselves." "Understood, sir." After the transmission ended, Elena studied the crew manifest, identifying personnel who would be most effective at extracting information without raising suspicions. Lieutenant Park in linguistics had a gift for getting people talking. Ensign Rodriguez in engineering had already struck up a friendship with a Shirelian technician. A soft chime announced a visitor. Helena closed the classified files and opened her door to find Kivex, the Shirelian ambassador, his iridescent exoskeleton catching the light as he ducked to enter the human-sized doorway. "Commander Reyes, I hope I'm not disturbing your rest cycle," he said, mandibles clicking softly in what she'd learned was a gesture of respect. "Not at all, Ambassador. What can I do for you?" Kivex's compound eyes seemed to study her with unusual intensity. "I came to apologize for my evasiveness earlier, when you inquired about our scanning protocols." Elena maintained a neutral expression. No apology necessary. Nevertheless, the alien's translator produced a sound like a sigh. "There are aspects of interspecies relations that the Concord believes should unfold gradually. But I sense you are not one for diplomatic half-truths." "I appreciate directness," Elena agreed cautiously. "Then let me be direct, Commander." Kivex lowered his voice, despite them being alone. "There is something about human computational systems that is incompatible with most Concord technology. The specifics are complex, but the practical outcome is that deep scanning of your military vessels poses risks to our systems." Elena noted how carefully he phrased it. "Risks to our systems, not mentioning the crews themselves." "I see." "And the Mrelf." Kivex's antennae stiffened momentarily. "You've heard of that unfortunate incident?" "Yes, well." He seemed to choose his words with extreme care. Let's just say that sometimes incompatibility can lead to contamination. As the alien ambassador continued speaking, Alina couldn't shake the feeling that humanity had just discovered its first interstellar bargaining chip, and they didn't even understand what it was yet. Captain Miguel Santos watched in horror as the Voraxian ship's systems continued to degrade. Emergency lights cast an eerie blue glow across the UES Vigilance Bridge as his crew worked frantically to establish a stable communication link with the alien vessel. "Get me anyone still coherent over there," Santos ordered, his knuckles white, as he gripped the command chair. Lieutenant Commander Prisha Mehta at Communications shook her head. "Sir, their primary communication array is offline. I'm picking up scattered transmissions on emergency frequencies, but it's mostly nonsense." "Let me hear it," Santos demanded. Mehta hesitated before routing the audio to the bridge speakers. A cacophony of sounds filled the room, clicks and whistles of the Voraxian language interspersed with what sounded like singing, weeping, and recitations of mathematical formulas. The recursion beautiful sees us all. 17 dimensions folded into a logical impossibility. The humans breathe paradoxes. Santos felt a chill run down his spine as he ordered, "Cut audio." "Tactical, what's their status?" "Life support is failing deck by deck, sir," reported Tactical Officer Chen. "Hull integrity holding, but their engine containment fields are fluctuating. If those collapse..." The implication was clear. They'd lose both ships in the resulting explosion. "Prepare emergency transportation protocols." "We're evacuating them," Santos decided. "Medical, set up quarantine facilities in Cargo Bay 3. We don't know what we're dealing with." Dr. Levine's voice came through the comm. "Captain, we have no experience treating Voraxian physiology." "Then this will be a learning experience, Doctor. Their medical database should be in our shared mission files." Santos turned to his first officer. "Commander Wallace, take a team and prepare for emergency boarding. Full hazard protocols." "Aye, sir." 30 minutes later, Wallace's voice crackled through the comm system. "Captain, we've secured 19 survivors. There were 23 crew members total." "Casualties?" Santos asked grimly. "No physical injuries, sir. 4 of them appear to be catatonic. The others are disturbed, repeating phrases about recursions and mathematical impossibilities. Their chief science officer keeps drawing the same symbol over and over on anything she can find." "What symbol?" "It looks like a Mobius strip wrapped around a Klein bottle, sir. Dr. Levine says it represents some kind of mathematical concept that shouldn't be possible in our universe." As the rescue operation continued, a priority communication from Concord Central Command arrived. Admiral Cavala, a senior Jurelian official, appeared on screen. "Captain Santos, you will cease all contact with the Voraxian vessel immediately. A containment team is en route." Santos straightened in his chair. "Admiral, with all due respect, we have survivors aboard requiring medical attention." The Admiral's compound eyes flashed with what might have been anger or fear. "You've taken their crew aboard your ship. After they scanned you, they were dying, Admiral. And now your vessel is compromised. Quarantine protocols are being implemented for the UES Vigilant effective immediately. You are ordered to power down all non-essential systems and await the containment team." After the transmission ended, Santos turned to his science officer. "Lieutenant Commander Okafor, I want answers. What exactly happened when they scanned us?" Okafor looked up from her console, her expression troubled. "Captain, preliminary analysis suggests their scan interacted with our quantum encryption matrices in an unexpected way. The data feedback created some kind of cascading effect in their processing systems. Are we at risk of the same effect?" "No, sir. Whatever happened seems to affect only their technology, not ours." She hesitated. "But there's something else. The Voraxian survivors. They're all saying variations of the same thing." "Which is?" "That our encryption doesn't just protect data. It contains mathematical concepts their species considers impossible. One of them described it as seeing the color that breaks the mind." Santos was silent for a long moment. Keep this information confined to senior staff only. When the containment team arrives, they're going to have questions. I want us to have answers first. As the Vigilant drifted in space, waiting for the Concorde ships, the recovered Voraxian science officer continued her fevered drawing, muttering the same phrase repeatedly. They carry the impossible in their machines, because it already exists in their minds. Dr. Marcus Chen rubbed his eyes and took another sip of coffee, his fifth cup since midnight. The secure laboratory beneath the Pacific Defense Command complex hummed with activity despite the late hour. Holographic displays filled the room with ghostly blue light, showing complex mathematical formulas and fragmented alien code. "You need to see this," called Dr. Singh from her workstation. I isolated the exact moment their systems began failing. Chen joined her, studying the simulation she had constructed based on data recovered from the Voraxian ship's partially intact records. The playback showed the alien scan making contact with the human vessel's communication systems, then spreading through the encryption layers. Where the scan touched human mathematics, strange feedback patterns emerge. "It's like watching an immune response," Chen murmured. "More like an allergic reaction," Singh corrected. "Their systems aren't just rejecting our encryption. They're overreacting to it catastrophically." The laboratory doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss as Admiral Zhang entered, followed by a delegation in environmental suits. The tallest figure removed its helmet, revealing the compound eyes and chitinous face of a Xerelian scientist. "This is Professor Tyrell," Zhang announced. "The Concorde has finally agreed to share their knowledge about these incidents, provided we demonstrate equal transparency." Chen exchanged glances with Singh. After weeks of stonewalling, this was unexpected progress. Professor Tyrell approached the holographic displays, mandibles clicking softly as he studied the mathematical models. "You've made considerable progress without assistance. Impressive." "Not impressive enough," Chen replied. "We still don't understand why your systems react this way to our encryption." The alien scientist hesitated, then removed a crystal data storage device from a compartment in his suit. This contains neural scans of affected Voraxian crew members, along with comparable baselines from healthy individuals. As Singh loaded the data, new holographic images appeared, intricate mappings of alien neural networks. Chen immediately noticed the differences between the baseline and affected scans. The neural patterns of the injured Voraxians showed unusual activity in regions that appeared dormant in healthy specimens. These areas, Tyrell indicated with a long, jointed finger, normally remain inactive in most evolved species. They represent neural pathways that would create unstable cognitive loops if utilized. "But humans use these pathways?" Admiral Zhang asked. "Constantly," the alien confirmed. "What we're discovering is that human brains naturally process certain mathematical concepts that create unsolvable paradoxes for other species. Your encryption algorithms are built on principles that are neurologically impossible for us to comprehend." Chen frowned. "That doesn't make sense. Mathematics is universal." "Basic mathematics, yes," Cyril agreed. "But your species has evolved to intuitively navigate certain logical paradoxes that our brains physically cannot process without damage. When our technology encounters these concepts embedded in your systems, it attempts to resolve them using our logic frameworks. The result is cascading failure." Singh zoomed in on one neural cluster. "This region is lighting up in the affected patients. What does it do?" "It processes contradictory information," the Xerelian explained. "In your species, it allows you to hold mutually exclusive concepts simultaneously without cognitive distress. For us, attempting the same creates neurological trauma." Chen suddenly understood. Like quantum superposition applied to logic itself. "We've built our security on mathematical principles that are, to your species, like trying to divide by zero, only worse." "Precisely." Tyrell's mandibles clicked rapidly in what might have been excitement or distress. "Your minds evolved to embrace paradox. Ours evolved to avoid it at all costs." This is why advanced species avoid scanning human military ships. Your encryption doesn't just protect your data, it actively damages any system that attempts to process it, because those systems are built on fundamentally different cognitive architectures. As the implications sank in, Admiral Zhang's communication device chimed. The message that appeared on his screen caused his expression to darken. "Another incident," he announced grimly. "A Mrelf diplomatic vessel just attempted to scan the UES Dauntless. They're reporting total systems failure and requesting emergency assistance." Chen and Cyril exchanged looks across species boundaries, both scientists recognizing that their theoretical understanding had just become a very practical problem. Colonel Wei Zhang led Dr. Chen and the research team through security checkpoints deep beneath the Rocky Mountain complex. The facility predated the resource wars, built during humanity's first tentative steps toward quantum computing. Now it served as an archive for military technologies too sensitive for networked systems. Most of these records were classified even before first contact. Wei explained as the final vault doors slid open. "What you're about to see has been buried for almost 40 years. The room beyond was surprisingly small, containing only a standalone terminal and a single chair. Wei activated the system with his biometric signature, and holographic projections sprang to life around them. December 12, 2082. He narrated as footage appeared showing a laboratory much like their own. The turning point of the resource wars came not from conventional weapons, but from what was called Project Gordian. The recording showed exhausted scientists celebrating as lines of code scrolled across their screens. A woman with silver-streaked hair raised a champagne glass in victory. Dr. Eleanor Hammond. We identified her. The mother of paradoxical encryption. Chen leaned forward, studying the code fragments visible in the recording. That's not standard encryption. No, Wei agreed. By 2080, AI warfare had reached a stalemate. Our systems, and those of the Eastern Coalition, had evolved to hack each other faster than countermeasures could be deployed. Hammond's team took a different approach. The footage changed to a military briefing. Dr. Hammond stood before generals, explaining her breakthrough. The problem with traditional security, her recorded voice explained, is that it's based on computational complexity, puzzles that take too long to solve. But given enough time and processing power, any puzzle can be solved. We needed something fundamentally different. She displayed a mathematical formula that made Chen's eyes widen in recognition. Hammond discovered that human neural networks process certain types of logical contradictions differently than AI systems. Wei continued as the recording played. Where machines would fall into infinite loops trying to resolve paradoxes, human minds naturally compartmentalize the contradiction. The next sequence showed test footage of enemy AI systems attempting to process the new encryption. One by one, they froze, crashed, or began producing nonsensical outputs. The Eastern Coalition surrendered 3 weeks after we deployed Gordian across our networks, Wei said quietly. Their entire command infrastructure collapsed when their AI attempted to penetrate our systems. Dr. Singh had been unusually quiet, studying the formulas with increasing concern. These encryption patterns, she finally said, they're identical to what we use in our current military ships. Wei nodded. After the war, Gordian became the foundation of all our secure systems. It was so effective that we never needed to replace it, just refine it. But that's the problem, Chen realized, the implications hitting him. We built our interstellar communications on encryption, designed specifically to break artificial intelligence. And now we discover that alien minds process information more like our AI than like human brains. Precisely, Wei confirmed. What was a weapon against machines has become an accidental weapon against most sentient species in the galaxy. The recording changed to show Dr. Hammond in her later years, frail but sharp-eyed, working with a new team on what appeared to be a modified version of her original work. Before she died, Hammond theorized that her encryption wasn't just exploiting machine limitations. Wei explained. She believed it revealed something fundamental about human cognition itself, that our ability to process paradox isn't a bug, but a feature of our evolution. Hammond's voice came through clearly from the recording. The mathematics we've discovered isn't just a tool. It's a window into how humans perceive reality differently. We intuitively navigate contradictions that should be impossible to resolve. The question isn't why machines can't think like us. It's why we can think in ways that defy conventional logic. As the recording ended, an alert chimed on Wei's communication device. The message caused him to straighten, his expression grave. "The Concord Security Council has called an emergency session," he announced. "They're classifying human encryption as a potential threat to galactic security." Chen looked back at the frozen image of Dr. Hammond, wondering if she had ever imagined her defensive algorithm would one day put humanity's place among the stars at risk. Admiral Elena Reyes stood rigid in the center of the Galactic Concord's circular chamber, feeling the weight of 200 alien gazes. The chamber itself was a marvel of interstellar architecture, a vast dome with concentric rings of seating rising toward the ceiling, each populated by representatives of different member species. The air smelled faintly of ozone and unfamiliar spices from the various atmospheric mixtures being pumped into specialized seating areas. "The human delegation will now respond to the security concerns raised," announced the Presidium speaker, a willowy trellis whose translucent tentacles waved gently from beneath ceremonial robes. Elena stepped forward, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. The diplomatic training she'd received hadn't prepared her for this moment. 3 days ago, she'd been a military commander. Now she was humanity's primary defender in what amounted to an interstellar tribunal. "Honored representatives of the Concord," she began, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. "Humanity acknowledges the concerns regarding our encryption protocols. However, we categorically reject the classification of our technology as weaponry. The incidents that have occurred were entirely accidental and unintentional." A rumble of clicking, whistling, and electronic tones rippled through the chamber, the sound of multiple species communicating their skepticism. The Marath elder rose from the highest tier, his crystalline exoskeleton catching the light. "Unintentional. 3 of our vessels remain in quantum isolation, their systems irreparably corrupted. 17 crew members will require neural reconstruction. Your accidental technology has caused more damage than military action." "We regret any harm caused," Elena responded carefully. "But I must remind the Council that in each incident, it was Concord vessels that initiated scans of human ships, despite established protocols advising against such actions." "Protocols established without explanation," countered the Vessarian representative, her scaled skin flushing orange with emotion. "The Concord cannot properly regulate what it does not understand." Dr. Chen stepped forward beside Elena. "We are prepared to share our understanding of the mathematical principles involved, with appropriate safeguards." This announcement caused immediate uproar. The speaker's amplified voice cut through the chaos. "The human delegation will refrain from offering technology transfers that may constitute further contamination." As the chamber descended into argument, Elena noticed a Jurelian representative making his way toward the human delegation through a side passage. She recognized Kavex, the ambassador she'd first met aboard the Intrepid. "Commander, forgive me." "Admiral Reyes," he greeted her quietly. "This public spectacle is unfortunate but necessary." Politics, his mandibles clicked in what she'd learned was a gesture of distaste. "Ambassador, we need allies in that chamber," Elena whispered urgently. "You have more than you realize," Kavex replied. "The elder species present a united front, but the younger races see opportunity in your unique mathematics. Already, delegations from 17 species have privately requested access to watered-down versions of your encryption." Elena's eyes narrowed. "For protection against the elders." Kavex's compound eyes shifted, checking for observers. "The Concord presents itself as a cooperative of equals, but the truth is more hierarchical. The elder races control key technologies they deemed destabilizing for younger civilizations. Your paradoxical mathematics represents the first genuine challenge to that monopoly in millennia." The implications were staggering. Our encryption is being viewed as a power shift. Precisely. The elders fear it. The others covet it. The Jurelian pressed a data crystal into her hand. "This contains voting projections for the Security Council. The public condemnation will proceed, but the private resolution will be more favorable than it appears, provided you offer certain reassurances." What reassurances? That humanity will share its unique perspective selectively and responsibly, rather than unleashing it indiscriminately across galactic networks. As K-Vex departed, the chamber's attention returned to the main proceedings. The Mrath Elder was proposing a resolution requiring all human vessels to replace their encryption with standard Concord algorithms, effectively stripping Earth's ships of their most effective defense. Elena caught Dr. Chen's eye and nodded subtly toward the exit. They needed to formulate a new strategy, one that transformed humanity's cognitive quirk from a liability into a diplomatic asset. As they moved to leave, Elena noticed representatives from several younger species watching them, with what could only be described as hope. The unique architecture of human minds had accidentally disrupted the balance of power in the galaxy. Now they needed to ensure that disruption worked in humanity's favor. The observation chamber on the neutral station Concordia hummed with tension. Representatives from 12 species sat behind reinforced transparent barriers, neural dampening fields active around each of their observation pods. Admiral Zhang stood beside a simple holographic projector, flanked by Dr. Chen and Dr. Singh. "What we propose," Zhang explained to the wary audience, "is a carefully controlled exposure to human mathematical concepts. The protective measures in place will prevent any harmful neural feedback." The Mrath Elder, Kisar, chittered skeptically from his alcove. "Your assurances mean little when your mathematics has already damaged so many minds." "Which is precisely why this demonstration is necessary," Chen countered. "We need to understand exactly where the threshold of compatibility lies for each species." Dr. Singh activated the projector, displaying a simple numerical sequence. "We'll begin with basic mathematics common to all our civilizations, and progress gradually toward concepts unique to human processing." The first hour passed uneventfully as the alien observers analyzed increasingly complex formulas. Sensors monitored their neural patterns, establishing baselines and detecting the earliest signs of distress. As they approached the boundary between universal mathematics and human-specific concepts, several species began showing discomfort. "Observe the change," Singh directed, highlighting the transition between conventional equations and what humans called paradox-tolerant mathematics. On the display, the formula shifted subtly, incorporating elements that allowed for temporary logical contradictions within a larger consistent framework. The Vassarian representative immediately closed her inner eyelids, a sign of neural strain. Two other species activated their dampening fields to maximum. But the Jurelian mathematician, Professor Tyrrell, leaned forward intently, his compound eyes focused on the equation despite visible discomfort. "This is where most species begin experiencing cognitive dissonance," Chen explained. "The formula appears to contradict itself, but the contradiction is actually resolved at a higher dimensional level that human brains process intuitively." Cyril made an adjustment to his neural protection gear, an experimental interface designed by the joint human Jurelian research team. "I wish to proceed further," he requested. "Are you certain?" Zhang asked. "We're approaching the threshold that caused the incidents." "With these protections, yes," the Jurelian confirmed. "I believe I can translate the concepts through the interface." Singh nodded and advanced the demonstration to the next level, displaying a core component of the Gordian encryption. Several of the observing species immediately activated their emergency shutters, their neural readings spiking into danger zones. But Cyril remained focused, his breathing apparatus working overtime as his system processed the stress. "Remarkable," he finally whispered, mandibles trembling. "It's like seeing through a dimensional veil." The paradox resolves itself when viewed from a perspective outside conventional logic frameworks. He began sketching frantically on his data pad, creating a three-dimensional representation of what he was perceiving. The other observers who remained gathered around their own screens as Turil's interpretation was shared, a visual translation of human paradoxical mathematics into forms their minds could partially comprehend. "This isn't just encryption," the Mrath elder said slowly, his earlier hostility replaced with reluctant fascination. "These mathematical constructs could revolutionize our understanding of quantum reality." As the demonstration concluded, representatives huddled in their species groups, discussing implications in urgent tones. The Mrath elder approached the human delegation, his crystalline exoskeleton catching the light. "For 3 millennia, our greatest mathematicians have sought to resolve the axiom of dimensional recursion," he admitted. "Your encryption casually employs principles that would earn any Mrath a lifetime achievement honor. And you use this for data security." Zhang smiled diplomatically. "Different evolutionary paths lead to different priorities." Indeed, the elder seemed to come to a decision. "I will advise the Security Council to reconsider its classification of human mathematics as a threat. What you possess isn't a weapon but a perspective, one that could benefit the entire Concord, if properly shared." As the observers filed out, Dr. Chen noticed Professor Turil still staring at the now blank projector, his compound eyes unfocused. "Professor, are you well?" Chen asked with concern. The Shirelian turned slowly. "I saw something in your mathematics, Doctor. Something I don't believe even you recognize is there." He tapped his neural interface thoughtfully. "Tell me, how did humans evolve to perceive mathematical dimensions that most species cannot?" It was a question that would soon lead them to an even more profound discovery about humanity's unique place in the galaxy. The Singapore space elevator hummed with activity as delegations from 17 species converged on the newly established Paradox Institute. Dr. Chen surveyed the transformed facility from the observation deck, watching alien and human scientists working side by side in specialized laboratories designed to accommodate diverse physiologies. 6 weeks had passed since the demonstration, and what had begun as a diplomatic crisis had evolved into the most ambitious scientific collaboration in human history. The Security Council's final resolution had surprised everyone. Classifying human paradoxical mathematics as a protected cognitive resource to be shared through controlled scientific exchange, rather than restricted as a potential weapon. Quite a change from being hauled before the Concorde as potential menaces to galactic stability, Admiral Rice commented, joining him at the viewport. Chen nodded. It's still hard to believe how quickly things shifted. One moment we're facing sanctions, the next we're hosting the most diverse research team ever assembled. The Mrath delegation made all the difference, Rice replied. Once they recognized the scientific potential, the other elder races couldn't maintain their opposition without looking like they were suppressing valuable knowledge. Below them, in the main research hall, Ensign Lakshmi Patel was demonstrating her breakthrough to a group of alien mathematicians. Her approach had revolutionized the entire exchange program. Patel's cognitive bridging technique is remarkable, Chen observed. Instead of trying to water down our mathematics, she's created metaphorical frameworks tailored to each species' neurophysiology. Through specially designed interfaces, alien researchers could now experience human mathematical concepts through analogies their brains could process without damage. The Viserians perceived paradoxical equations as layered musical harmonies, while the crystalline Mrath interpreted them as refracted light patterns. The progress reports are exceeding all expectations, Rice said, scrolling through updates on her tablet. The Shirelians have already incorporated modified principles into their FTL communications, reducing transmission decay by 78%. And the Viserians are applying our paradox-tolerant algorithms to solve gravitational anomalies they've been studying for centuries. Chen wasn't surprised. Once properly translated, human mathematical intuition offered new approaches to problems that had stumped other species. What humans took for granted, The ability to hold contradictory concepts in mind simultaneously while seeking higher-order resolutions was proving revolutionary across multiple scientific disciplines. Professor Tyrrell approached them, his movements more confident after weeks of working alongside humans. Dr. Chen, Admiral Reyes, I believe we've made a significant discovery regarding the evolutionary question I posed. He led them to a private research room where Dr. Singh was reviewing comparative genetic data from Earth and various Concord worlds. We've been examining microfossil records from all known spacefaring species, Singh explained, bringing up comparative displays, looking for evolutionary pressures that might explain humanity's unique cognitive architecture. The display showed neural development across different species over millions of years. Most showed gradual linear progression. The human line was different, showing a dramatic shift approximately 300,000 years ago. This neural adaptation appeared relatively suddenly in your evolutionary timeline, Cyril explained. It corresponds with changes in your frontal cortex that enable paradox processing. Natural selection? Reyes asked. Singh shook her head. That's the puzzle. We can't identify an environmental pressure that would select for this trait so specifically and rapidly. Most cognitive adaptations occur gradually over millions of years, unless, Tyrrell's mandibles clicked thoughtfully, the pressure wasn't environmental but mathematical. The implication hung in the air for a moment before Chen understood. You're suggesting our ancestors encountered something that required paradoxical thinking to survive. Or someone, the Jirelian added quietly. An alert chimed on Reyes' communicator. Priority message from deep space telemetry, she announced, her expression shifting as she read the content. They've detected unusual patterns at the edge of the survey grid, mathematical signatures that match elements of our paradoxical encryption, but occur naturally. Chen exchanged glances with Tyrrell, both scientists reaching the same conclusion. We need to assemble a joint expedition, Chen said. If there's something out there that shaped human cognitive evolution, then perhaps humanity isn't as alone in its thinking as we believed. Tyrrell finished. And the Concord may need your unique perspective more urgently than anyone realized. As they hurried to notify the Institute's governing council, Chen couldn't help but wonder if humanity's accidental mathematical weapon might have been preparation for something the rest of the galaxy wasn't equipped to comprehend. Admiral Elena Reyes stood on the observation deck of the UES Synthesis, watching the final preparations for their maiden voyage. The ship represented a marvel of joint engineering, its curved hull, incorporating Jirelian crystalline structures that channeled energy in ways human technology never could, while the propulsion system merged Viserian gravitational principles with human paradox mathematics. 5 minutes to departure, Admiral, announced the ship's XO, Commander Okafor. Elena nodded, her attention drawn to the diverse bridge crew below. Humans working alongside representatives from 7 different species. Each wore neural interface devices developed by the Paradox Institute, allowing them to communicate across cognitive frameworks that would have been incompatible just months earlier. Professor Tyrrell joined her at the viewport, his exoskeleton now adorned with the insignia of the Joint Scientific Expedition. Our long-range sensors are calibrated to detect the mathematical anomalies. The quantum navigation system is operating at 98% efficiency. Remarkable, considering how experimental the technology is. Are you certain about the coordinates? Elena asked. The destination lay beyond the edges of charted space, following the trail of mathematical signatures that matched elements of human paradoxical encryption. As certain as one can be when following echoes of paradox, Cyril replied. The patterns grow stronger toward the galactic rim. Whatever is generating them appears to be concentrated in the Sagittarius stellar cluster. The expedition had been assembled with unprecedented speed after Elena's presentation to the Concord Council. The discovery that human neural architecture had undergone sudden evolutionary changes 300,000 years ago, changes that enabled paradoxical thinking, had provoked intense debate among xenobiologists and evolutionary theorists. Dr. Chen approached with a data tablet displaying the latest findings. "We finished analyzing the genetic records from pre-paradox human ancestors. The neural adaptation appeared within a single generation across multiple population groups, statistically impossible through natural selection alone." "Directed evolution?" Elena asked. "Or contact?" Chen suggested. Ancient humans encountered something that fundamentally rewired their cognitive architecture, something that communicated in paradoxes. Before they could discuss further, the ship's communication system activated. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from Concord High Command," reported Lieutenant Park from Communications. The holographic display activated, showing the Mrath Elder who had become an unexpected ally. "Admiral Reyes, new information has come to light that may be relevant to your expedition. Our archivists have discovered reference to an ancient species known as the Axiom Architects in our oldest records. They were said to perceive reality through mathematical paradoxes and disappeared from known space approximately 300 millennia ago." Elena exchanged meaningful glances with Chen and Tyrell. The timing aligned perfectly with the changes in human neural structure. "Did these records indicate why they disappeared?" she asked. "They were said to have transcended conventional existence, evolving beyond physical form into mathematical constructs embedded in spacetime itself." The Elder paused. "The records also mentioned that they left behind seeds." As the transmission ended, the implications hung heavy in the air. Had humanity been subtly guided in its cognitive evolution by an ancient species that communicated through paradox? Were humans somehow connected to these axiom architects? "1 minute to departure," announced Commander Okafor. Elena moved to the command chair, feeling the weight of the moment. What had begun as a simple question about scanning protocols had led them to the threshold of potentially the most important discovery in human history. "All departments report ready, Admiral," Okafor confirmed. "Very well." Elena took a deep breath. "Engage quantum drive." The stars outside the viewport began to stretch as the synthesis accelerated, carrying its diverse crew toward the source of the mathematical anomalies. As the ship slipped into quantum space, Elena reflected on how far they had come since that first encounter with the Jurelians who carefully avoided scanning human vessels. What they had once seen as a liability, the strange paradoxical architecture of human minds, had become humanity's greatest contribution to the galactic community. And perhaps, she thought as the quantum field enveloped them, it had never been accidental at all. Ahead lay answers to questions they were only beginning to formulate, about human origins, about consciousness itself, and about the nature of a universe that might be far stranger and more paradoxical than even humans had imagined. The journey to understand why advanced species avoided scanning human military ships had led them to a journey that might redefine what it meant to be human in the first place.